There are 4 anxiety disorders that I want to talk about. So I'm going to talk about specific phobia, social phobia, generalized anxiety disorder, and panic disorder. Alright, so specific phobia goes back to grade 9. Our science class had just finished watching Deep Blue Sea, and Deep Blue Sea is about really intelligent sharks that take over humans in a lab. So for me, after this film, I am an avid swimmer and I could no longer swim. So I actually would not get into the water and swim. And when I finally got into the water to swim my laps, as soon as my head was submerged underwater, all of the thoughts, all of those screenshots and scenes from Deep Blue Sea flushed into my head, and I would think about sharks and their jaws and their teeth and how they are going to chew me up and spit me out. The other scary thing was I couldn't even shower. And when I finally did manage to get into the shower, I would look behind my back and I would just spin in a circle inside the bathtub because I thought that a shark would emerge from the drain and eat me. So this might sound really funny to you, but for me in the moment it was not. It was an extreme fear, and I know it was completely irrational, that it didn't make sense, it was unreasonable, but I couldn't control it, and it was very persistent. So I could finally endure taking my swimming classes and taking showers, but I'd be under a lot of stress. So my heart would be racing, I'd be sweating and shaking, and I'd worry that a shark is going to attack me. And for me, even though it was very irrational, it was very real. So specific phobia is this incredible fear that makes no sense but exists about an object or a situation. So for me in this case, it was a shark. For other people, it could be spiders. It could even be injury from needles. As you probably guessed, I'm not the best artist, so needles. And the other thing I said was situations. Heights. It could be environmental stuff like storms, planes, certain places, even strange things like noises or clowns. And because of this irrational fear, people's lives are severely affected. So their routine life is affected. Think about me in my showers. Can you imagine how that affected my life? That every time I took a shower, something simple as that, I was very stressed. And it can affect people's work. It's very dysfunctional, this fear. And it can look like a real panic attack. So now, what if we turn the situation and say it was in a social context? Then we'd be talking about social phobia. So people with social phobia are afraid of social situations. Why? Because their fear is fear of embarrassment or being judged. The scrutiny is what they fear the most. And the interesting part is this is very cultural. So in Far East cultures, people don't say they fear embarrassing moments. What they actually fear is that they might offend others. So being offensive is their fear. So for these situations, someone being in public and feeling that they're exposed to scrutiny, judgment, criticism, and that they might embarrass themselves is what gives them extreme anxiety. And the level is the same as for a specific phobia, is extreme. They know it doesn't make sense and it's always there regardless. And it can be so bad to the point that some people can't use public washrooms, and the key word is public. They can't eat in public. They can't go out to outings, even if, say, it's a small outing with some of their closest friends. The next one I want to talk about is generalized anxiety disorder. Generalized anxiety disorder. And to illustrate this, I'm going to use FC RIMS. That's how I remember what the symptoms are. And the other way I remember it is that I have a friend who has generalized anxiety disorder. So for these people, these symptoms have to have lasted for at least 6 months, and they have to have at least 3 of the symptoms. And symptoms I'll abbreviate as XX. FC RIMS. Rims of your car, the rims of your eyes. Because my friend was always fatigued. She was super tired all the time. She had very low concentration. She couldn't focus. She was a straight A student at one point, but when she got generalized anxiety disorder, she worried so much about everything. Even though her life was going well, like she had a stable boyfriend, her family was supportive, her parents' health were okay, she was doing great in school, her health was okay, and yet even though everything was going so well, she couldn't stop worrying that something was going to happen, something terrible, just excessively worrying about everything in her life. And as a result, her school marks went down. You can see now how this affects people's lives. And the other strange thing, sitting with my friend in class, was she was so jittery. And she's not a jittery type of person. She was restless. She'd shift around a lot. She'd go to the bathroom and come back. And she was starting to get really grumpy with me. She'd snap at me. And this is not the friend that I know. Like, she's not usually like this. The other thing was she started to have a lot of muscle tension. She noticed that in the morning she couldn't even open her jaw. Her jaw was so sore, and it was because through the night she had been grinding and clenching her jaw. So her teeth started to wear down, and then her jaw just started to ache so much she had to get a mouth guard. And the other thing was with my friend was she was having sleep problems. So she'd say that she'd go to bed at 11 p.m., but she'd stay wide awake as an owl until 3 in the morning. So when she woke up, she didn't feel rested at all. So for someone with generalized anxiety disorder, they usually have at least 3 of these symptoms for at least 6 months. And what do they worry about? Nothing particular, just everything. And the last one that I want to talk about is panic disorder. I have a story to share again. I'd made a new friend in a new city, and we were going to the washroom, and all of a sudden, I heard her crash in her stall. And I looked in, peeked in on her, and my friend was a mess. She was super sweaty. All of a sudden, like her hair was damp. And I could hear her like really breathing hard, like, right? And when I talked to her later about it, she said that she was really short of breath. Almost like she was choking. And that her heart was racing. Like she felt like her heart wanted to jump out of her chest, and that was probably the worst thing. And she had a wave of nausea. She was clutching her belly on the floor, and she said her stomach really hurt. And the other thing was, my friend was shaking everywhere. And what had made her fall to the floor was because she felt really dizzy all of a sudden. So what my friend had was a panic attack. And it was her first one ever. And the strange thing about panic attacks is it'll suddenly hit you. And it'll hit a peak within 10 minutes. So it happens really suddenly, really fast. And then all the symptoms will slowly abate or disappear over 3 hours. So the rest of the day that I spent with her, her symptoms finally went away a few hours later. After this happened, and while it was happening, she had some fears. And this is common for people with panic disorders. She started fearing that maybe she was dying, and it made her felt like she was losing control. Or maybe she's just going crazy. Some people actually develop panic disorder with agoraphobia because they were in a certain situation and then they had an attack, the panic attack. And then they worry. It's like, I don't even know why that happened. There was no reason and I'm perfectly healthy. So they start thinking about it, and then pretty soon, when they're in a similar situation where that first attack happened, that situation now becomes a trigger. And they associate it with the attack. So now it's more likely that every time they're in that situation, they worry about having this attack, and that attack might actually happen. So then it just reinforces this. So then these people start developing agoraphobia. It's being afraid of being in a situation where it's difficult to escape, and they can have an attack. And the sad part about this disorder is that it has actually a very high correlation with suicide and depression. So to summarize for you, we talked about social phobia, specific phobia, generalized anxiety disorder, and panic disorders. And I arranged it in this order because, order. This is from high to low, lifetime prevalence. And all of these, sadly, are associated with depression, and no pun was intended there. More women are affected than men, so the ratio is about 3 to 2 on average for all these disorders. And people can actually abuse substances too, as a way to cope with their anxiety. And here, depression and suicidality that goes along with it. I just want you guys to keep that in mind. Now that you learned a bit about anxiety disorders, mental health stigma, I just want to put this out there. Doesn't help anyone, and quite frankly, it just makes it harder for people with mental health illnesses to do better. Mental health illnesses are diseases like anything else, like heart disease. So why not support these people? Instead of making them feel ashamed or embarrassed about it. Right? All right, that's the end of my talk. You guys have a great day.